The subject matter here that's riding over our thoughts and our speeches to you today is I'm going ahead now and put out the potential that 3 to 20 million people could possibly die from the coronavirus globally by the year 2021. And I'm going to tell you why I believe that's possible. I'm not going to deal with some of the data that comes, I will deal with rather some of the data that comes from Johns Hopkins University and some of the world-renowned virologists and epidemiologists and Dr. Fauci, Dr. Burke, and a bunch of others, and those that are scientists also in the Wuhan or in the China Beijing district, and those whose nations have been afflicted. For instance, if you look now in Sao Paulo in Brazil, I believe that's the English word for St. Paul, Sao Paulo, in Brazil. I think it's the second largest city. I think the river city, the Rio de Janeiro. But at any rate, they have gone ahead now and dug hundreds of mass graves on a hilltop overlooking Sao Paulo, because they're dying in Sao Paulo now like you won't believe. And that Sao Paulo is now going into its winter season, but coming out of its summer season, which points up to so many epidemiologists and others that this coronavirus disease is not necessarily tempered by warmer weather. To be sure, it's easily transmissible more effectively in cold weather when people are sneezing and coughing, but it doesn't die in warm weather. So I think it's important for us to be able to understand that. And we want to try to make that clear that, and one of the reasons why I am convinced that there'll be at least 3 million to 20 million people that will die in the next year, within the next calendar 12 to 13, 14 months, you can see that many people dead. One is because of the erratic and absolutely asinine behavior of Americans. You will note that more people have died in America than in any other place where the coronavirus has struck. For instance, in South Korea, there have been less than 300 deaths because of the leadership of South Korea. I don't trust the numbers coming out of China. I think they lie quite a bit. But unmistakably, America is carrying, while it's only 1/5 of the world's population, it is carrying more than 1/3 of the world's deaths, mainly because of the absolute unbelievable, asinine, ridiculous leadership that we find within the Trump administration, and also with New York City with Governor Cuomo and Bill de Blasio, who perhaps could have closed down New York City a lot earlier. New York Times report that came out this weekend stated that if de Blasio and Cuomo had closed down New York City on the 8th of March rather than on the 15th when they closed it down, potentially some 36,000 people would not have died. That's a lot of people that are dead in 1 week period of time because the social distancing has had its effect. It is a powerful move in terms of stopping the coronavirus from doing its due. But come up close, because I want to say the reason why I believe that there'll be either 3 million, and as you'll remember, there was some prognostication by Dr. Fauci and Dr. Burke going back a couple of months ago, a month and a half ago, that they were estimating some 250,000 people potentially would be a low number to a couple of million people would die by August of 2020. You remember that? Now they've scaled it back down because of the social distancing has scaled it back down, but they themselves, and you've heard that, I don't have to bring it up to validate what I'm saying, you've heard it yourself. They were estimating that the least number of people that would die by August would be 240,000 to 250,000, and the maximum would be about 2 million. So I am saying with the oncoming fall and winter of 2020 and 2021, that number can skyrocket from 3 million to 20 million. And let me tell you why. Now listen to me very carefully. When in the next week or so, right now all 50 states are partially open And the lockdown that has gripped the America for the last month is now being eased, and people are going back to their regular due. And in America, there are some 54 million students that go from grade school to high school. There's another not 20 million, but there's another 5 to 7 million that go to colleges and universities and trade schools that are all shut down. So just in the education genre of the social distancing and the quarantine efforts that has probably been most effective is you're dealing with 60 million students that are not in schools, colleges, or universities that are online studying. Now, we don't know when the schools are going to open up, and most states are still very reticent about opening schools because they realize the summer months is not going, just because the summer comes, doesn't mean with all the disinfectant that schools are going to reopen. So if you put 60 million people who are now out of social contact with each other, put 60 million people together, many of them asymptomatic, others of them open to the coronavirus, right? Many of them still have the coronavirus in their blood. 60 million, that's in America alone. Now remember, I said that the 3 to 20 million would be a global number, right? The coronavirus hit the northern part of Italy and Milan, and that region, in the northern part of the Italian Riviera, and the ritzy part of Italy. It didn't make it down to Rome or across the Mediterranean into Sicily, or over down into Africa, which it will. It just didn't travel that far as of yet, but it will make it to Rome, to Sicily, and to Egypt. It will, no doubt about it. And then, of course, I just told you about Brazil. We know that the UK has also the second highest number of deaths because, of course, Boris Johnson was of the first outset or the mindset of Tribulation Trump, not locking down, didn't believe it was, something of importance. And then, of course, in Spain, in Madrid, and in Germany. And that's just for the European and important nations. You don't want to talk about Nigeria, you don't want to talk about, Liberia, Ghana, and those places, because they're not important, right? People dying over there all the time, but they're going to die there too. So check this out. Just in America alone, not in Italy and in Europe, Germany and Spain, just in America alone, 60 million students going back to school. Now, my estimate, and I don't have any scientific data to prove my point on this, but I don't think that half of the American school students that go to public school are going to return in September, August, September. I don't think they're going to do it. I just don't think they're going to do it. I think that the schools are still going to be a wasteland for a while. But even with 30 million students begin to interact with one another, some of them are asymptomatic, some of them have the diseases, and then they take it back to their homes, to their grandparents, to their, to their relatives. They take it back to McDonald's or places where they go to eat. You got 30 million ambassadors of coronavirus just from the school system, but that ain't all. Now they want to open up the churches, right? And the churches are more dangerous than the school. These churches, I don't know if I'd call them churches, but that's what they call them. So from this point on, I'll call them churches as well. But I don't respect their spiritual efficacy. Let's put it that way. But churches are a place of social contact. The people go to church for social contact. They don't go to church to learn about Jesus or to stop sinning. It's a social move people go to church for. Hugging and kissing and high-fiving and slapping and dancing and all that kind of stuff. It's the reason why a lot of people go. Now the Catholics, they got another thing. I don't know about these Catholic people, right? They got another thing. They like to kneel and flex and genuflex and then they're up and down and up and down and up and down and carrying on. And here comes the priest with that little thing and he's spraying that smoke all over everybody, hitting people on the head as they go over there. I don't know. But they too, right? So then you got some 50 million to 80 million worshipers, right, that may return to church. So now we're dealing with a total of 140 million people that, let's say, will be returning back to school or to church by September. And many of them, all you need is 10,000 of those people to still be affected with coronavirus. And the usually coronavirus, I don't know what the transmissible rate is, ratio, whether it's one person can influence or cause another other 3 people, and then another 3 people cause another 3 people. So you got, X factor of 3 million %, right? That's where I'm getting my numbers from. And I have a reason for telling you this. But not just churches. Here in the New York City area and then across America, you've got public transportation where if you don't have subways like we have here in New York, Washington, San Francisco, you've got buses everywhere, right? And people take buses and trains. We have 1 million riders on the subway system in New York, 1 million plus every day. Sneezing and coughing, all jammed up to one another. You ride the subway, you're gonna know what it feels like to be a sardine. Buses are a little bit more spaced out, but yet people cough and sneeze on buses. I've heard reports of bus drivers dying here in New York. People got on the bus and sneezed right on him, and he died 2 weeks later. So you got the public transportation, you got Amtrak, you got public buses, you got school buses. Then you got people going into these workplaces. You got all that going on. And so you're just going to escalate the contact once there's social distancing, whether you realize or not. The social distancing has worked. Even I'll give it credit. I don't give anybody credit for anything. You know that. I don't give nobody the credit. Maybe I give James Brown some credit. Michael Jordan too, by the way. I like Michael. Y'all like Michael Jordan? You like James Brown? Anyway, so you could potentially see 3 to 20 million people die, and because it ain't over with yet, and we're not going to have a vaccine. I don't care what they tell you. I don't care what these laboratories tell you, that you're not going to have a vaccine by September or by January. There ain't no way you can produce. We may never get a vaccine for this coronavirus. If we do, you cannot. The process by which a vaccine becomes a vaccine. When I hear these people talking about, especially this tribulation Trump, this orange-faced, orange-haired orangutan, this pathological degenerate, this public degenerate and pathological liar, when I hear him talk, well, by September, January, we're going to have he's fudging, he's pushing it because he wants to get reelected in November. He's promising you'll have a cure by January, right? Even he knows he can't get one before November. But when people say we'll have a vaccine by January of 2021, it's like saying I'm pregnant, a woman's pregnant, but a woman's pregnant. She said, well, in 3 weeks, I'm going to have the baby. What the hell? You ain't gonna have no baby in 3 weeks. Now you may be pregnant, you may be working on it. That baby got to intubate, that baby got to gestate. And if you get a baby at 6 months, it's gonna be weakly, born with beriberi and scurvy, a 6-month-old baby ain't gonna be you need 9, that woman needs to go to term, 9 full months. And every vaccine needs to go at least 3 years. You're listening to Dr. Manning, and this is the Manning Report. No, but seriously, come on now. That's a great example, I think. So when you hear these idiots, this Trump is this idiot talking about by January, it's like a woman saying, I'm pregnant and I'll give birth in 3 weeks. I'll give birth to a 3-week-old baby. You're going to give birth to a dead baby. Even in 3 months, in 6 months. For America to have a vaccine that works by December of 2021 is like giving birth to a 3-month-old baby. You got to bring the child to term. Vaccines, and America has been working on vaccines for umpteen years. Smallpox, AIDS, Ebola, H1N1, swine flu, West Nile flu, Lyme disease, right? The influenza. And you never get a vaccine that fully works less than 3 years. So here we are. We are 3 million. And that's the only thing that's going to really accept those of us who are members of the elect. That here, the deal is this, is that 20 million people could die in the next 18 months. 50 million died during the Spanish flu in 1918. Huh? And so when you get the churches open again, you get the business places, restaurants open again, schools open again. You're going to have a major issue here in terms of the vaccine itself. So I'm simply saying to you that don't be so quick to think that this is all over with. It is. Now, I'm going to come back in a few moments and give you some more instructions about how I think you ought to learn how to protect yourself against this virus. But I'm going to ask the engineer to take me to a break, and I'll be right back with more of the Manning Report. This is a bit of a news blog we do, looking at spiritual wickedness in high places for the most part, making some observations about it and giving people a biblical foundation to the way of interpreting, rather than have Sean Hannity or Laura Ingraham or Janine Pirro or Anderson Cooper or Rachel Maddow or Don Lemon, Rush Limbaugh interpret what's going on in the world. You come to me and I'll tell you based on what the Word of God says. They'll just give you their worldly, sinful view. But the Manning Report will tell you what God has said, whether to say yea or nay, whether to go or to stay. You'll be led by the word of Almighty God. Come to the Manning Report on a daily basis to interpret the spiritual wickedness in high places, because there's plenty of it that's going on. And so I'm the Lord's servant, James David Righteous Rebel Manning, and I'm here to serve you with news and information.